Cloudcast Media. Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, and we are so happy to have on our friends from SDG&E. Full disclosure, love these guys. I've been working with them for many, many moons, and some of the roles I've had with Classroom of the Future Foundation and with the Union Tribune, Kazeem, Omidiji. He is just absolutely one of the cool cats around. He's the Director of Community Relations for SDG&E. How you doing, Kazeem?
I'm doing well, Drew. Thank you for having me here today.
It's an honor. Joined by your colleague, Pauline, Community Relations Manager. How you doing, Pauline?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having us.
Well, listen, you guys do just so much great stuff in the community. I'll start with you, Kazeem. How long have you been with SDG&E?
I've been with SDG&E about 12 years now. Started as an intern, believe it or not.
So what school were you in?
Hired out of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, UNLV.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, okay. So what made you go over to SDG&E as an intern?
So I'll tell you a very funny story. I actually came to SDG&E to present to the leadership team on behalf of a nonprofit that I was a part of called the National Society of Black Engineers.
Of what?
Of Black engineers.
How cool. Okay.
And so I actually came asking for funding for this nonprofit. And one of the executives that saw my resume and saw that I had worked for or was currently working for a power company in Nevada called NV Energy, or Nevada Power Company at the time. And, you know, I always tell this story. It's full circle moment being in this role in community relations, working with nonprofits. But the main reason I came to San Diego was also on behalf of a nonprofit. And so, had the opportunity to be an intern and came in and never looked back.
I think that's terrific. Listen, anybody who has spent any time in San Diego knows that it's in their DNA, yours personally, obviously, and of course, the company's DNA to be involved in the community. And what I've always appreciated with the folks, and we were talking about this before we went on the air, that I've been just so fortunate to work with, Jesse Knight and Molly Cartmill and Frank Ertas and Pauline and you, Kazeem. You guys are absolutely the opposite of checkbook philanthropy because you guys get involved with this as your employees. Talk about how important that is, Kazeem.
Well, I think from a community relations perspective, we always feel that we, as a company, are in the fabric of San Diego, right? Over 140 years building and partnering with this community. And so, you're right. The way that we do philanthropy is a little different because we really want to meet our nonprofit partners where they're at, right? And so we always think about it in three verticals: time, treasure, and talent. And how do we combine all of those resources together to make sure that our nonprofits who are boots on the ground, doing great work, really helping our communities thrive? Because when our communities thrive, really everybody is better off. And there's no better person doing that than Pauline, as she manages a huge portfolio of giving. And she does that very same work every single day. Either it's a meeting with nonprofit partners, touring with nonprofit partners, and understanding their needs, and again, meeting them where they're at.
Yeah, and Pauline, we've been just honored to work with you on many fronts. Classroom of the Future Foundation. I've been involved with that group when it started in '97, so I'm dating myself. But now with Jane running the organization, she's done a great job. Jane Schlosberg, and I'm on the leadership team on this. But you folks have made such a big difference for what we've been able to accomplish. And I'll just speak on behalf of Classroom of the Future, Foundation. So can't thank you enough for doing this. You're always supportive. You're always there. I know we're going to hopefully have a long relationship with you folks down the road and the beneficiary of course, are our 500,000 students that are in San Diego County. Talk about why this is so important to you personally.
Well, I'm a San Diego native. So, I actually, from where we're filming, I went to high school about a half mile down the street.
Which one?
I went to Scripps Ranch High School, about half a mile down the street.
Yeah.
And I didn't know too much about the, K through 16, or I guess K through 12 landscape until I came into this role. But I saw how many students didn't have resources that I had. And I loved meeting nonprofits like Classroom of the Future Foundation, who's basically filling in these gaps in a really important way. And without them, a lot of these students, they wouldn't have been able to overcome that gap. So, for example, with CFF this year, we're really proud to support the Linda Vista Innovation Center that you and the San Diego County Office of Ed have partnered with. And it's so fun. If you haven't been there, you absolutely have to tour. Check out the Minecraft room and the utility room, I guess I should say. But yeah, essentially making education accessible and equitable for everyone, so everyone can have that opportunity.
Yeah, and that makes such a difference. And people talk about DEI and equity and all that business, and then they're really the ones who actually do this, like you guys, and really make that difference. And Kazeem, I know what's so important about it is you change that one kid's life. Okay, you're not just changing his or her life; you're changing his or her family's life, their siblings' life, aunts and uncles. Talk about how important that is.
I mean, it's so critical and key for the development of so many. I'm a product of a nonprofit that has invested time into me, and I wouldn't be here today without that. And so when we think about developing the pipeline of students who are going to be our next engineers, our next scientists, right? It's equally important to really think about how do you create a diverse lens and putting resources into eliminating and alleviating those gaps, barriers, and challenges. And so, again, there's no better space than the nonprofit sector to do that because, again, they're boots on the ground. And I always say I feel honored and privileged to work with our nonprofit partners because we're the work that's being done can never be overstated. It is crucially important. And if we want to have a thriving economy, a thriving San Diego, we need that to be done. And that's why it's so important.
You hit something that's really important. You guys get it at SDG&E. You've gotten it ever since you folks, came into business. And, what I love about it, Pauline, because you've continued that torch in the role you've had, and I have to second what Kazeem said. You've done just a magnificent job.
Thank you.
And we're so appreciative of that. And because I've been very fortunate enough to be involved with some of the nonprofits, and I was on the USD School of Leadership and Ed Sciences board as a charter member when Paula Cordero ran it. And the amount of economy that nonprofits contribute to San Diego County is off the rails. You guys understand that. And by supporting the nonprofits, it's great to do these things that are reaching out to kids and all that, but it ties into the economy. Talk about that, Pauline.
So my number might be a little outdated, but last I checked, there was over 11,000 registered nonprofits in San Diego alone. So, they range from, really big organizations like your United Ways, American Red Cross, all the way down to, your volunteer organizations maybe working out of their garage or I guess, wherever they're working from home.
That's right.
But yeah, with that, San Diego is the 7th or 8th largest city in the U.S.
Yeah, right.
And Kazeem and I are always talking about how everyone is so connected. So I feel like everyone's only about 2 degrees connected from any stranger you may meet. And so
we are the smallest big town in the history of humankind.
We really are. And I think the more connections we have, the more exponential the impact is. So when you talk about economies, I feel like at that point, you can maximize the impact by having either 1, fewer redundancies, and 2, just having more minds in the room and being able to take a grant and actually take that $5,000 or $10,000 farther than you could before. So I feel like you get a lot of brain power in San Diego that you might not get in other cities.
Yeah, and you're right, the connectivity is so important. We're chatting with Pauline Ma, Community Relations Manager, SDG&E, joined by her colleague, Kazeem Omidiji. He is the Director of Community Relations. I'm Drew Schlosberg. You're listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show. We are the nation's longest-running community podcast, now in our 18th year, brought to you by the very cool folks of Mission Fed Credit Union. More than 6 decades of just doing great work in San Diego County. Talk a little bit about, and I'll start with you on this, Pauline, and we'll pivot over to Kazeem, the Inspiring Future Leaders Initiative.
Yeah, so I love that I get to, like, this is my day job, that I get to oversee the SDG&E's Inspiring Future Leaders Initiative. So the aim is to make education, specifically STEM education, accessible for K through 16 students. And the reason why we say K through 16 and not just K through 12 is we find, college is a really big goal for a lot of families, especially those first generations. Like you said, sometimes they are the pivot that, for their entire family. But we find that once they get to college, the work has just begun. And so we want to be able to be sure that they get through college, and so they can actually get into that job that's been that end goal for so long. And we recently just completed our 13th year of giving. Yeah, it's been around for a long time. We gave about $1 million to over 50 organizations like CFF who are doing really great work. Again, advancing STEM in underrepresented communities, also helping girls and encouraging them to go into STEM. As we know, there's still that gender gap, and we want to do what we can to alleviate that.
Yeah, so Kazeem, you engineer, you got STEM in your background, correct?
Yeah.
And so forth on that. And listen, we all know that, you can't turn around and not see how STEM has impacted your life, and sometimes you have to be, listen, everything you touch is tied to science, technology, engineering, and math. What got you into engineering? Why were you, what was the goal for you?
Well, I'll say I remember. So I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria, and what really inspired me to get into STEM and science, technology, engineering, and math, and specifically electrical engineering, was I saw my first, I would say, Apple desktop computer when I was about 11 years old. And that just changed my vision and just my journey into the technology space, because I had never seen something like that growing up in Lagos, Nigeria. And so that was my first inspiration that really led me to, and really it was just off of playing a game. It was just playing a game on a keyboard and a mouse and a big screen for a monitor. And that just transformed my whole trajectory in this field. And I always say STEM also provides a pathway for a lot of folks for generational wealth. I think it's the most single transformative space and industry and sector for underrepresented populations and communities to be involved in. And if done right, you can really see advancements in our communities, but also advancements in the quality of life and socioeconomic barriers that are really plaguing a lot of our communities today.
Yeah, and we know this. Again, you guys have done this for so long, and you believe in this, which is great. It equals levels the playing field. And when you level a playing field to someone who doesn't think their playing field can ever be leveled, it changes everything in this aspect of it. I'm preaching to the congregation, obviously. You know this better than anybody, but we see it because of your support of Classroom of the Future, just one of the 4 zillion folks that you support. But we see it because, and we just love the fact when you guys come to our annual event, Innovation Education Awards, and we see those avid students that have a 4.2 average, and they've overcome things like, are you kidding me? That's amazing what you've done. And now they're going to UC San Diego or Harvard or whatever. A lot of it, thank you very much, due to what you folks are doing, is just, so game changing. We come back from break. I want to talk about careers at SDG&E. I think, and of course that's in the wheelhouse of Classroom of the Future, as Pauline and you and Kazeem know. It's all about college and career, not college or career, college and career. And the beauty of SDG&E, you guys are great, employers. You treat your employees well. That's all you have to do is talk to a few people that work for SDG&E. On that aspect of it. And I think that's really important to talk about those careers. When we return with Kazeem Omidiji, he is the Director of Community Relations for SDG&E, joined by his colleague Pauline, Community Relations Manager. I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, broadcasting from the Mission Fed studios here in Scripps Ranch. We will be right back.
When you do your banking with Mission Fed, you get great rates on auto and home loans. That's good for you, but something good also happens for a lot of other people. We're not for profit, so we put money back into the community to help lots of great nonprofits to keep San Diego strong. So you're not just getting something good, you're doing something good. Come to Mission Fed. It's banking that's good for all.
Brand amplification is the DNA of Cloudcast Media, and our code is the powerful blending of sound, voice, and storytelling to lift local brands and their communities. Whether it is our Brandcast, Schoolcast, or Causecast platforms, the unifying ethos is all about this community, the one you call home. If you dare to dream and want to explore the brand amplification of Cloudcast, a national leader in local podcasting and other Winfluence strategies, please visit us at cloudcast.us.
I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media. You're listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union for more than 60 years, doing phenomenal work in San Diego County, really building up so many different areas, whether it's from food insecurity, literacy, art, everybody, everything in between. Joined by Kazeem Omidiji. He is the Director of Community Relations for SDG&E. He's with his colleague, Pauline, Community Relations Manager. You know, before we chat a little bit about your phenomenal Community Assistance Fund, I want to talk about careers and talk about that, Kazeem.
Yeah, well, I'll say I'm a testament to a lot of the careers at SDG&E. In my 11 to 12 years in the company, I've had close to about 7 different roles in the company.
That's SDG&E and Sempra.
Right. And so you can be an engineer, you can be an environmental scientist, you can be a CPA financial analyst, you can be an IT specialist, right? I think what people don't think about is to keep the lights on, right, throughout the day and reliable. And, over 17 years, most reliable electric utility company in the West Coast.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It takes a lot of different careers and a lot of different jobs to really make this happen and make this work. And so when we think about the career opportunities at SDG&E, it just runs the gamut. And one of the other things is, we have over 4,700 employees at SDG&E, and everyone is from the community here in San Diego and South Orange County. And so, you have your regional public affairs specialist, you have your media, marketing, communications. There's so many different divisions within SDG&E, and we're just proud to really be part of the fabric through our employees, and our employees are our greatest assets within the company.
Well, they're also your greatest ambassadors, and so we all know that. It was interesting when I was running community and public relations at Union Tribune, there was a huge study done by Bozell in 13 different countries, but they narrowed it down to the responses from England, Canada, the United States, on when they're asking the residents of those countries, what do they consider as a good corporate citizen? And number one, it wasn't even a close 2, 3, or 4, was not how much money they gave, is how they treated their employees, and that was number one. Because you're out there as your neighbors talking about what you do. How's it going at work? I love it. When I'm working, they don't care if you give $400 billion to an organization. You don't treat your employees well, it doesn't make a difference. So, kudos, to you on that aspect of it. Pauline, you've worked with us for quite a while now with, CFF. We're all about careers and almost what Kazeem was saying. And the beauty of it is, and I use this example, when I was working for the Union Tribune, running community and public relations, I was telling people, listen, there's many different careers at the UT. As a matter of fact, in our heyday, I think we had 2,400 people when I was working there at one point. Only 1/7 were journalists. 6/7 were everything else. They were marketing folks, they were transportation folks, they were advertisers, they were graphic artists, they were finance people, they were everything in between. And it's the same thing whether it's STEM and whether it's cyber. Well, yes, you probably, if you want to be in the world of developing things, you should know coding. They need lawyers. They need graphic artists. They need community relations people. They need salespeople. Talk about how important that is, Pauline, the diversity of the jobs.
Absolutely. So when we host students, typically high school students on our campus, it's my favorite question to ask, and that's how I start our day is, well, what kind of jobs do you think we have here? And, as Kazeem said, we keep the lights on. And so they say, oh, well, we have our line workers, of course, the ones up on the poles, maybe some engineers. And usually it kind of stops there. And that is very true. We have those very important workers, and they are the ones that, are keeping everything running. But to your point, Drew, we have a whole host of employees that focus on actually looking forward, so the future, not necessarily keeping the lights on the present now. But climate action is very important to everyone, not just in our region, but obviously worldwide.
Right.
And we know that's important to these future generations, especially Gen Alpha that's in school right now. It's something that they really care about. So we have jobs in climate action and sustainability. The rock stars of our company are actually our meteorologists. Because weather dictates everything, and we kind of take their guidance. We have a whole environmental services department. So we have folks in archaeology, making sure we're respectful of the land. We have botanists, we have biologists, and other type of STEM jobs that you wouldn't think would be associated with an electric and gas utility.
Well, and to your point, as so many kids in this generation are so laser beamed, on climate change, and so forth. My daughter's a fourth grade teacher up in Poway at Chaparral Elementary, and he loves talking about this type of stuff at all. And if we don't keep an eye on it, none of us will be here in not too long and all this. And you guys have always been great stewards of that. Before I get into bragging about you guys on what you really do with wildfire risk, and you take it very seriously, that's the understatement of the world, and are always on top of it. Talk about this community assistance fund that you guys have.
Yeah. So last year, I would say it was it was definitely a really difficult time for San Diegans. When you think about the rise of inflation in terms of housing and food, when you think about utilities also increasing, I think SDG&E found it upon itself to really impact and try and find a way to mitigate a lot of those impacts to our customers. And so we embarked on a $10 million fund for the first time in our company's charitable history towards housing and food insecurity, and granted 21 nonprofit organizations transformative grants. And really, and you talk about corporate the CSR, the corporate social responsibility of companies. Really, our focus was, okay, what is the deep impact of the grant making that we do? What is the result? And we had an advisory council that really informed us on these two elements were the most critical and the most, I would say, impactful elements facing our communities for last year, and really still to this day. And so, embarking on that, and that was ran by one of our community relations manager, Morgan Justice Black, and really did a fantastic job, really working with the San Diego Foundation in partnership to really, I would say, evaluate over 100 applications that came in. And narrowed it down to 21 amazing nonprofits that are doing transformative work till this day in the spaces of housing security and food insecurity.
Yeah, and we all know when COVID hit, it was like a shot between the eyes with the food insecurity. We already had a pretty big high number of folks in San Diego County that fell under this. And then, of course, it went up exponentially. And what's always interesting to me, and you guys are always on top of this, Kazeem and Pauline, is people who don't think food insecurity is an issue in San Diego County, because they really don't look at this. And that's the same thing we say on the show all the time. I said, you just don't know how many kids in San Diego County have never been to the beach. How's that possible? Yeah. A ton of people. Never been to the mountains, never been to a lake, never been to a Padre game or whatever the case may be. You guys know that and are very attuned to it. And you are doing transformative things. I think what I'd love to talk about, certainly, unless you are living on the space station Mir, and even if you are, you probably know about it. Wildfire risk in California has been off the rails and so forth. And so we've had our issues in San Diego County, to say the least. I'll start with you on this, Kazeem, and we can pivot to you, Pauline. You guys take this very seriously. Talk about that.
Yeah, well, most people don't know this, but FEMA actually just designated San Diego County as the most fire-prone county in the country.
Yeah. Did not know that, but it doesn't surprise me.
And I will say for SDG&E, wildfire mitigation and wildfire risk has been one of the most important priorities, right behind community safety and employee safety for us. And so we've dedicated and invested enormous amount of resources, both from resources from time, treasure, and talent towards wildfire mitigation and having a whole department dedicated to mitigating wildfire risk. I think the technological advances that our company has made through not only our meteorologists that we have on staff, right? We have the densest weather network in the country as a result of that work in wildfire mitigation. We have cameras positioned throughout the entire county surveying in case there's a fire that comes up. We partner with CAL FIRE. We partner with all the fire agencies to really understand fire behavior and fire modeling. We have a vegetation management system that really looks at clearing brush and clearing, I would say, barriers from vegetation throughout our lines in our system. We have patrollers that go day in and day out that patrol our lines and make sure that it's safe to operate. We have a top-notch public safety power shutoff program, which was first in the country and now adopted by many utilities for wildfire mitigation. I always say our lines were designed by standards by our California Public Utilities Commission to withstand about 65 to 70 mile per hour winds. Well, today we're seeing winds go up to 110 miles per hour.
Right.
And so we've had to bolster our infrastructure so that we are readily prepared for these changes that we're seeing in climate.
Yeah. So listen, kudos to you folks for what you do for us as people that have to benefit from SDG&E and to keep our lights on and all that, and what you're doing with the climate change and all that, and then your community outreach is just there's. I mean, you guys are at top of the game, and you guys are always doing it. You're very consistent with it, and there's just so much such importance to the fact that the groups that know that you guys are going to be with them shoulder to shoulder are going to continue to do their mission on this. Classroom of the Future being one of those. I'll start with you on this, Pauline, then pivot over to you, Kazeem. What can our listeners do to support what you folks are doing at SDG&E?
As far as our philanthropic efforts go, and I would say this to members of the public, or something that our employees do really well, just get to know a nonprofit. There's, like I mentioned, over 11,000 out there, but you be an advocate for a cause that you care for, and just start small. Start volunteering. You start spreading the word. Maybe your friends see, oh, this is what Drew does every weekend, and oh, I heard about that. I think Kazeem volunteers with them. And from there, I feel like you can build that exponential impact. But, it just has to start with one.
Yeah, that's very true. And something that you actually are passionate about. How about you, Kazeem? What can we do to support you?
Well, I would say, connecting with nonprofits in our community, I always say I don't know where our communities would be without the work of nonprofits. And you asked the question about, the fabric of nonprofits in our community. I tell folks, I said, you go to a public park, you go to a recreational center, you go to anything that you do in San Diego, I guarantee you a nonprofit is involved or has helped bring this into fruition. A library, right? As you have the Library Foundation, right, which is a nonprofit. So there are many facets of the nonprofit sector that intersects with our daily lives. And so getting to know and volunteer and work with one of these nonprofits that are so resource constrained really helps, not only just for the individual, but certainly for our communities alike.
Well, listen, I hope you folks will take me up on this offer. What I'd love to do is have you come back in and maybe bring in a couple nonprofits that have benefited from your work, okay? Maybe some that are in food insecurity, or maybe some that are in, housing, whatever the case may be, and really with you guys there, showcase the work you've done to support them. How's that sound?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Good. We're going to make sure that happens. Kazeem, Omidiji, and Pauline Ma, thank you so much for coming in. I know you guys are drinking out of a fire hose. You have so much work to do in this aspect. We're honored to work with you and a lot of the nonprofits I've been involved with, especially Classroom of the Future Foundation. Wishing you and your SDG&E colleagues nothing but just great success moving forward. And we'll look forward to having you make a return appearance.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. I'm Drew Schlosberg, and you've been listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg's Spotlight on the Community Show, the nation's longest-running community podcast, now in our 18th year, brought to you by the great people of Mission Fed Credit Union for 6 decades, doing phenomenal work for people living in San Diego County. We hope you enjoyed the interview.
You've been listening to an episode of Drew Schlosberg's Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego community. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
Cloudcast Media.